Lena Hart's hands trembled slightly as she held out the cappuccino, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her chest. "Here's your coffee, sir." The man didn't even glance up. He snatched the cup from her hand and took a loud sip, only to grimace and slam it back on the counter so hard the foam splashed over the edge. "This has oat milk." "I said whole milk. Are you deaf or just stupid?" Her stomach sank. She knew what she'd heard. She always triple-checked orders, especially with the lunch crowd packing into the café like sardines. She opened her mouth to respond, but the man stepped closer, towering over the counter now. "You have any idea how much time you just wasted?" "I'm late for a pitch meeting because of you." "I'm sorry," but she began, keeping her voice calm even though her heart was racing. "I don't want your apology," he snapped, jabbing a finger toward her. "I want someone who knows how to do their damn job." A few heads turned. Lena felt her face heating, not from embarrassment but from the familiar, helpless frustration she knew too well. She dealt with rude customers before but never one this aggressive. She opened her mouth again, but a deep voice cut through the tension like a blade. "That's enough." The man turned his head, clearly not expecting to be confronted. Lena followed his gaze, and for a second, she forgot how to breathe. The man standing behind the angry customer was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a tailored navy suit that looked like it cost more than her car. His dark hair was slightly tousled, like he'd run a hand through it on his way in. But it was his eyes, cool, sharp, and steady, that made her stomach flutter. He looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not in line for coffee. "Who the hell are you?" the angry customer barked. "Someone who doesn't stand by when a man tries to bully a woman." He stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "You're angry about milk. Get a grip. You don't talk to people like that, especially women who are working hard to serve you." The customer sneered. "Mind your business, suit." "I just made it my business." The man stepped even closer, his tone low. "Do you want me to call security, or are you going to leave on your own?" Something shifted in the air. The customer's eyes flicked around, suddenly aware of the attention on him. Murmurs started among the other patrons. He muttered something under his breath, grabbed his laptop bag, and stormed out of the café. Lena let out a shaky breath. She hadn't realized she was holding it. "Are you okay?" the man asked, turning to her now. His voice softened. "Yeah," she said, nodding. "Thank you, that could have gotten worse." "You kept your cool," he said. "That was impressive." "I've had practice," she said with a small smile, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Some people don't think baristas are human." He smiled back. It was quick, subtle, but it lit up his face. "Well, I do. Can I get an espresso, please?" "Absolutely." Her hands moved on autopilot as she prepped his order, though she was hyper-aware of him standing there watching her. Not in a creepy way, just curious. Present when she handed him the espresso, he reached for his wallet. "No charge," she said quickly. "After that, it's on the house." He paused. "Then let me leave a tip." "No need, really." He looked like he was about to insist, but then simply nodded. "Thank you. I'm Roman Pierce, by the way." Lena blinked. That name sounded vaguely familiar. "Lena." "Nice to meet you, Lena." He held her gaze a moment longer than necessary. "Take care of yourself." And just like that, he walked out. She didn't know then that he would come back the next day. And the day after that. By the end of the week, he knew her favorite song, How She Took Her Coffee, and that she was working 2 jobs to pay off her student loans. He never pushed, never asked for more than she wanted to give, but he was there. Always noticing, always kind. "You don't seem like the kind of guy who has time to hang out in a cafe every morning," she said one Wednesday as he waited for his drink. "Don't you have a company to run or something?" He leaned against the counter. "I have a company." "I just don't feel like running it at 8 in the morning," she laughed. "Ah, so you're one of those guys." "What kind of guys?" "The rich ones who pretend to be chill but secretly have assistants texting them every 5 minutes," he grinned. "Guilty." Her eyes widened. "Wait, are you serious?" "About being rich," he shrugged, sipping his espresso. "Yeah," she blinked. "Like, how rich?" He leaned in slightly. "Let's just say I don't have to check the price of my coffee." "You're not just rich," she muttered. "You're loaded." He gave her a crooked smile. Is that a problem? No, she said slowly. It's just surprising. He studied her for a moment. You didn't Google me. Should I have? I don't know, he said with a half smile. Most people do. Well, I'm not most people. I'm starting to notice that. They were quiet for a beat. Then she said, Why do you keep coming here? He set his cup down. Because you're here, her heart stuttered. That night she couldn't stop thinking about him, and the next morning when he walked in again, his eyes found hers instantly. Dinner, he said. Tonight. Let me take you somewhere nice. I don't know. Lena, he said, stepping closer, voice low, I've spent the last week thinking about you, and I'm not the kind of guy who chases people, but I'm standing here asking you. Let me take you out. She didn't even try to fight the smile tugging at her lips. Okay. When he picked her up that night, he brought her a dress from a boutique she couldn't even afford to walk into. I didn't know what you liked, so I bought two. Pick one, he said, holding up the garment bags like it was the most normal thing in the world. That's insane, she whispered, touching the fabric. You can't just buy dresses for people. I can, he said, and I want to. She chose the navy one. It fit like a dream. Dinner was at her rooftop restaurant she'd only seen in magazines. There were string lights, a view of the city skyline, and a table already waiting for them. This is unreal, she whispered as they sat. You deserve it, he said simply, and for the first time she believed that maybe. She did. The door of the private car closed behind her with a whisper-soft click, sealing Lena inside the world of Roman Pierce, a world that seemed to operate on a different frequency than her own. The scent of leather and something expensive she couldn't name filled her senses as the city passed in a blur outside the tinted windows. Roman sat beside her, relaxed, one arm resting casually along the seat. He wasn't looking at her, but she could feel his attention all the same. His presence had a gravity she couldn't explain, like even silence around him carried weight. You've been quiet since dinner, he said finally, his voice low, almost tentative. She turned toward him. I'm still processing. That place had a chandelier bigger than my apartment. He chuckled, but there was a trace of something softer behind it. I didn't bring you there to impress you. No, she asked, raising an eyebrow. I brought you there because I figured you deserved to see what happens when someone actually treats you right. She looked away, emotions flickering too fast to catch. It's not something I'm used to. I know, he said, and the way he said it made her stomach tighten. You don't talk about your past much. Because it's complicated, she said, not unkindly, and messy. Most people don't want to hear about the parts that aren't pretty. I do, she hesitated, then folded her hands in her lap. I dropped out of grad school because my mother got sick. I was her only caregiver. I worked nights, took her to appointments during the day, and still fell behind on everything. When she died, I had nothing left, no savings, no degree, just debt I couldn't outrun. He didn't interrupt. He didn't look away, he just listened. I took the first job I could get, she continued, and I've been hustling ever since. People think if you work hard, you'll eventually get somewhere, but sometimes you're just treading water. He was quiet for a moment. You're not just surviving, Lena, you're fighting. That's not nothing. She swallowed the lump in her throat. Most people don't see the difference. I do, he said again. She glanced at him, surprised by the intensity in his expression. Why me? You could be with someone who doesn't come with all this baggage. He turned his body toward her fully now. I've dated people who looked perfect on paper, polished, predictable, and I've never thought about any of them as much as I think about you. You're real. You don't pretend. And when I'm with you, I feel like myself, not Roman Pierce, CEO, but just Roman. The car pulled to a slow stop in front of a building she didn't recognize. Roman didn't move to get out. What is this place? She asked. My place, he said, watching her closely. I'd like you to see it. No expectations, just come upstairs. She hesitated, but something in his tone made her nod. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, glittering with 1,000 lights. The space was open and modern, with clean lines and dark wood accents, but it felt lived and not cold like she expected. He didn't give her a tour. Instead, he walked toward the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter. "Do you ever get tired of it?" she asked, walking slowly to the window. "Having everything?" "I didn't always have this," he said, handing her a glass. "I built it from the ground up. The first company I started failed so hard I lost everything and ended up sleeping in my cousin's basement. Took me 3 years to climb out." She turned to him, surprised. "You," he nodded. "I know what it's like to have nothing. That's why I don't take this life for granted, but sometimes it gets lonely." She took a sip, the warmth of the drink spreading through her chest. "You don't strike me as the lonely type. People see the suit, the car, the dinner reservations. They don't see the late nights, the pressure, the people who only want what I can give them. You're the first person in a long time who hasn't asked me for anything. Maybe I should," she teased lightly. "Might be the only way I ever afford rent again." He smiled, but his expression shifted quickly. "I'm serious, Lena. I want to help you. Not because I pity you, because I respect you. You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know enough to want more." She set her glass down. "I should go. It's getting late. I'll have the driver take you." He walked her to the elevator, but before the doors closed, he reached out and gently took her hand in his. "Let me see you tomorrow," he said. "No pressure, just let me keep getting to know you." She didn't answer right away. But then she tightened her fingers around his and nodded once. The next morning, she returned to work like nothing had changed, but everything had. She felt it in the way her hands moved more confidently, in the way her thoughts drifted to him even during the rush. When the doors opened that afternoon and he walked in again, wearing a gray coat over a black turtleneck, she felt her throat go dry. "Stealing a moment between meetings," he said casually. "Or checking up on me," she replied, narrowing her eyes. "Guilty," he said. "I was thinking. What if I showed you more of my world?" "You've done enough," she said. "I don't want to be a project." "You're not," he said. "But there's a benefit gala this weekend. It's important to me. I want you there." She hesitated. "That's not really my scene." "I'll be with you," he said. "You won't have to pretend, just be yourself." She took a breath. "I'd need something to wear," his lips curved. "Already taken care of." She gave him a look. "Of course it is." That night, a package arrived at her apartment, no note, no sender name. Just a midnight blue dress wrapped in tissue and a pair of silver heels that fit like they were made for her. Lena stood in front of her mirror, heart pounding. She didn't recognize the woman staring back, but she wanted to meet her, and she wanted Roman to be the first one who did. The gala was held in a marble-pillared museum that had been transformed into a dreamscape, crystal chandeliers glittering overhead, live string quartet playing near a grand staircase, and soft candlelight casting golden shadows across the floor. Lena's heels clicked against the polished stone as Roman guided her through the crowd, his hand gently resting at the small of her back. She'd never been in a room like this before. The air buzzed with wealth and power, every person dressed in designer gowns or perfectly tailored tuxedos. Waitstaff in white gloves floated between clusters of socialites holding champagne flutes and speaking in hushed, clipped tones. Lena felt like she'd stepped into a painting, beautiful, surreal, and slightly suffocating. "You okay?" Roman leaned in, his voice brushing her ear as they paused near the base of the staircase. "I keep expecting someone to ask me to leave," she said under her breath. "No one's going to ask that," he replied, scanning her face. "You belong here because you're with me." "I don't think that's how it works," she said, eyes darting to a nearby woman in a silk jumpsuit who was openly staring at her. "That woman's name is Miranda Eves. She runs a venture capital firm and once spilled vodka on the mayor's lap during a speech. Trust me, you're already more impressive than half the room." Lena choked on a laugh, but it helped. She straightened her shoulders and took his offered glass of champagne. "You're good at this." "At what?" "Making someone feel like they matter." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a slow sip from his glass, watching her over the rim. "That's because you do." Before she could respond, a man in a dark red tuxedo approached. He looked about Roman's age with a sharp jawline and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Pierce," he said with a nod. Didn't expect to see you here after what happened in Berlin. Roman's expression didn't change, but Lena felt the tension ripple through the air. I wasn't aware my travel schedule was your concern, Nash. You always show up when there's money in the room, the man said, turning to Lena. And who's this? Lena Hart, Roman said before she could speak. She's with me, a pause. Then Nash offered his hand. Pleasure, I'd say welcome, but I imagine this is a bit outside the usual. Lena lifted her chin. You mean because I don't own a pharmaceutical brand? Nash blinked. Roman hid a smile behind his glass. Well, Nash said, clearing his throat, enjoy the evening. As he walked away, Roman leaned in. That was perfect. I'm not here to impress your enemies, she said. You already did. They moved through the room, Roman introducing her to people whose names she barely caught: CEOs, investors, politicians. But what surprised her most was how he made space for her in every conversation. He didn't parade her around. He didn't use her to make a statement. He included her, listened when she spoke, and made sure she was never left standing alone. Later, on the rooftop terrace, the city stretched below them, glittering and alive. Lena stepped to the edge, her fingers curling around the stone railing. I get why you come to these things, she said softly, but I don't think I ever could. Roman joined her at the railing. You don't have to, she looked up at him. Then why bring me? Because I wanted you to see all of it, not just the suits and speeches, the pressure, the posturing. So you'd understand why I keep coming back to you. Her chest tightened. Roman. I know I move fast, he said, but when I like something, I don't pretend I don't, and I haven't stopped thinking about you since that first day. She turned toward him, her voice quiet. I don't know what this is yet. Then let's figure it out together. He reached for her hand and she let him take it. As they stood in silence, the door behind them opened and a tall woman in a silver gown stepped out. Her movements were graceful, practiced. Her gaze flicked between them before settling on Roman. I was wondering if you'd show tonight, she said, voice smooth. Hello, Elise, Roman said, his tone unreadable. Lena stiffened. Elise smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You used to say galas were a waste of time. Still do, Roman replied. But this one had a reason. Her eyes moved to Lena. And who's the reason? Lena started to introduce herself, but Elise cut her off. I'm Roman's ex-fiancée. The words hit like a slap. Lena froze, her hand still in Roman's. Elise, Roman said, his voice cold now, leave it alone. I'm not causing trouble, she said lightly, eyes locked on Lena. Just surprised. You always said you'd never get close to anyone again, that it was safer that way. Roman's jaw flexed. That was a long time ago. Not that long, Elise said with a tilt of her head. Be careful, darling, he has a habit of disappearing when things get real. Roman stepped forward. Enough. Elise lifted her hands. I'm just being honest. And with that, she turned and walked back inside, her heels echoing on the stone. Lena stared at the skyline, her heart pounding. I should have told you about her, Roman said quietly. It ended badly. She wasn't who I thought she was, and I let it change me. I closed off for a long time. Lena didn't respond right away. Why didn't you tell me before tonight? Because I didn't want her past with me coloring what you think of us. She turned to face him. But it does, not in the way you think. It makes this real. You've been hurt. You're not some perfect fantasy, he blinked, surprised. I don't need you to protect me from your past, she said. Just be honest about it. He nodded slowly. I can do that. But if you ever disappear on me, she added, I'll find you and throw espresso in your face. His chuckle was low and genuine. Duly noted. They stood together under the stars, not speaking, the city humming below. And for the first time, Lena felt like she wasn't just visiting Roman's world. She was becoming a part of it. Rain drizzled over the city as Lena stepped out of the cab, her heels clicking against the slick pavement. She hesitated at the foot of the stone steps before lifting her chin and climbing to the front door of Roman's building. A doorman in a tailored coat greeted her with a nod, already expecting her. Inside, the elevator hummed upward with a quiet pulse, her reflection staring back at her from the mirrored walls. It had been 3 days since the gala. 3 days of silence from Roman. No calls, no visits, nothing. She had replayed that rooftop moment with Elise too many times to count the way Roman's voice had gone cold, the flicker of something in his eyes when Elise exposed a side of him Lena hadn't seen. Not fear, not regret, guilt. The elevator doors opened to the penthouse and she stepped out into the quiet. The lights were low. A fire flickered in the distance. She walked slowly, her pulse accelerating with each step. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Roman said from the balcony. Lena turned toward the glass doors. He stood outside, rain misting his shoulders, his jacket discarded somewhere behind him. There was a stillness to him she hadn't seen before, like the weight he always carried had finally started to press too hard. "You disappeared," she said, opening the door and stepping out. "Again, I needed time." "To do what?" "Hide," his jaw tensed. "To figure out how to tell you something I should have said already." She folded her arms. "Then say it." He turned toward her slowly. "I almost didn't come into the café that day." "What?" "I just walked out of a meeting with my CFO. We were finalizing a deal that would force me to sell off half the company to people I didn't trust. I was angry, tired, so I took a walk. No driver, no schedule. Just wandered." He paused, his voice quieter now. "And then I saw you, the way you stood your ground, the way you didn't flinch. I walked in, not because I wanted coffee, but because I wanted to know what kind of woman could hold herself together like that." Lena swallowed hard. "You never told me any of this." "I didn't want you to think I needed saving." She stepped closer. "But you did." He nodded once. "I'm not perfect, Lena. I've made dumb decisions. I've cut people out because it was easier than being vulnerable. Elise wasn't wrong about everything. I used to run when things got real. And now," she asked, voice steady. "I'm still scared," he admitted, "but I'm more scared of losing you than I am of failing again." Her expression softened. "So what are we doing, Roman?" "Because I can't keep getting pulled in and pushed away." He reached for her hand, his palm warm despite the chill in the air. "We're doing this, all of it. No more vanishing. No more pretending this is casual. I want to be with you." She searched his face. "Then prove it." He let go of her hand and walked back inside. Confused, she followed, only to find him standing by the dining table, holding a thick, weathered folder. He opened it and laid its contents out in front of her: blueprints, permits, and a letter of approval. "What is this?" "A new storefront," he said. "In the Arts District, corner unit, high foot traffic. I bought it last week." She stared at him. "Okay, but why?" "I want to open a cafe with you, not mine, ours. You run it, design it, name it. You'll have full creative control. I'll handle the back-end logistics, but it'll be yours." She blinked. "Why would you do that?" "Because you've spent your whole life building something for other people. It's time someone builds something for you." Tears pricked the corners of her eyes. "You barely knew me when this started." "I know you now," he said, stepping closer. "I know you don't back down from a fight. I know you light up when you talk about coffee blends and community spaces. I know you hate being underestimated and you're terrible at accepting kindness without thinking there's a catch." "I don't want to owe you anything," she whispered. "You won't," he said. "This isn't charity, it's a partnership. And it's my way of showing you I'm serious." She looked down at the papers, then back at him. "You're really doing this?" "I already did." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single silver key. "It's yours." Her fingers curled around the key slowly, as though afraid it might disappear. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you're the only thing in my life that doesn't feel like a transaction." She laughed softly through the tears. "You're ridiculous." "I'm in love with you," he said. The words hit her like thunder, loud, impossible to ignore, shaking something loose inside her. She stepped into him, her hands finding the sides of his face. "I love you too." The kiss was slow and certain, the kind that didn't ask questions, it answered them. Later that week, they stood inside the bare bones of the new café. The windows were dusty, the walls still unpainted, but Lena's eyes sparkled as she turned in the center of the space, already seeing the future. "I want local artists to display their work here," she said, "and a community board. Maybe even poetry nights." Roman leaned against the doorway, watching her like she was the most important thing in the room. "Whatever you want." When she turned toward him, he held out a tiny gold plaque. She took it, breath catching when she read the engraving, "Heart and Grind." "You named it after me?" she asked. He shrugged. "I figured you'd change it." She shook her head. "No, it's perfect." The grand opening came a month later. Roman stood beside her as she cut the ribbon, flashes from cameras lighting the street. Crowds poured in, and Lena moved through them like she'd been born to do this, graceful, confident, and completely in her element. As the night wound down, he pulled her aside, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You built something beautiful," he said. "So did you," she replied. He kissed her forehead, then leaned in. "Next chapter," she smiled. "Let's write it together." The smell of fresh paint still lingered faintly in the air as Lena adjusted the final vase of lavender on the cafe's centerpiece table. The sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a soft morning glow across the wooden countertops and shelves lined with hand-picked ceramics. It was early, an hour before opening, and the world outside was still stretching awake. Roman stood across the room, sleeves rolled to his elbows, focused on adjusting the lighting dimmers with the kind of precision he usually reserved for boardroom presentations. There was something disarming about seeing him like this, barefoot, slightly rumpled, and completely at ease in a place that had never been part of his world before she stepped into it. "You know you're not technically on staff," Lena said, sliding behind the espresso bar and raising an eyebrow at him. He gave the dial one final turn. "I'm not interfering. Just ensuring the lighting flatters your coffee." She laughed, then paused, her fingers brushing over the smooth grain of the counter. "It still feels strange. Like I'll wake up tomorrow and this will all have been some really elaborate dream." Roman crossed the room, resting his hip against the bar. "You built every inch of this. Nothing about it is a dream, it's yours." She glanced up at him. "Has anyone ever told you you're a little too good at saying exactly the right thing?" He leaned forward slightly. "Only you." The door opened, and a man with a clipboard stepped inside. Michael, the city's final health inspector. Roman gave her a look before discreetly stepping aside. Lena greeted the inspector, walked him through the kitchen, storage, and prep areas, answering each question with the confidence of someone who had poured herself into every detail. When the inspection was finally over, Michael checked a final box, handed her the signed approval, and offered a rare smile. "Not many first-time owners get through this without a single note," he said. "You did good." As he left, Roman stepped back into view. Lena held up the form, eyes wide. "Approved, officially, legally, and irrevocably approved." Roman pulled her into a spin, lifting her off the ground before setting her gently back down. "I never doubted it." She wrapped her arms around his neck, her voice quieter now. "This feels like the first time my life is truly mine." "You've always had the reins," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Now the world just gets to see it." That night, they hosted a soft launch for close friends and collaborators, people who had offered time, advice, or just belief when Lena had begun this terrifying, exhilarating new chapter. The cafe glowed with warm lighting and subtle jazz, the scent of cinnamon and espresso curling through the air like a promise. Roman stayed close but never hovered. He watched her move through the room, connecting with people, laughing, commanding attention without demanding it. It struck him that this was what he had been chasing for so long, not just success, but substance. Not just admiration, but authenticity. Later, as the evening wound down and guests filtered out with hugs and congratulatory smiles, Lena locked the front door and leaned against it, her heels dangling from one hand. "I don't think I've ever been this tired and this proud at the same time." Roman walked over, reaching for her free hand. "Come here." She let him pull her into the center of the room. The lights were low, the music soft. He placed one hand at her waist and took her other in his. "No one's watching," he said. "Dance with me." She rested her head against his chest as they swayed, slow and quiet, surrounded by the echoes of everything they'd built together. "I was scared to let you in," she whispered. "At first I thought you were just another man passing through a life I hadn't figured out yet." "And now," he asked softly, "now I can't imagine it without you." He pulled back just enough to look at her. "Then don't, because I'm not going anywhere," she smiled, eyes glistening. "What happens next?" Roman reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He didn't kneel. He didn't need to. The moment was already bigger than tradition. "Whatever you want to happen," he said, opening the box to reveal a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond set in a band of platinum. "But if you'll let me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life beside you. No more meetings, no more guarded goodbyes, just us. Building something real." Lena stared at the ring, then at him, her throat tight. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious." She reached for the box, then paused. "Roman Pierce, are you proposing to me in a coffee shop?" He grinned. "I'm proposing to you in your coffee shop," she laughed, tears slipping down her cheek. "You're insane. But you're going to say yes." She took the ring and slid it onto her finger, her voice trembling. "Yes." They kissed, surrounded by the scent of roasted beans and the soft hum of the city beyond the glass. A year later, the café had expanded. Lena now ran 2 locations and was mentoring other women launching small businesses. Roman had stepped back from his company's day-to-day operations and invested in community development projects, many of which began at the corner table of Heart and Grind. They were married in a garden surrounded by friends, laughter, and the quiet hum of violins. Lena wore a tea-length dress and no shoes. Roman wore a linen suit and couldn't stop looking at her. They spent their honeymoon in a stone villa near the Amalfi Coast, where mornings were filled with sun-drenched breakfasts and evenings with wine and starlit walks. Not once did Roman check his phone. Not once did Lena think about what she'd left behind. They didn't need a fairy tale. They had something better. They had a life. Together.